Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're an IT director or a C-suite executive right now, you already know that migrating from VMware Cloud Foundation to a physical infrastructure is a massive technical undertaking. But today, we're zooming in on the side of the migration that usually dictates its ultimate success or failure, the human side. We're going to unpack the exact training and personnel requirements you need to secure this transformation. So let's jump right in. Here is our executive syllabus. We want to give you a really brief beginning of course overview of the exact operational chapters we'll be covering to secure your migration. First up, the strategic case for training. Then in Chapter 2, assessing your team's skills and the target stack. Chapter 3 is all about controlling the migration narrative, followed by navigating the actual technical cutover in Chapter 4. Finally, we'll look at building permanent institutional knowledge and leave you with a highly actionable 30-day plan. The insights we're covering in this explainer are drawn straight from the strategic research of Virtualization Options LLC. You can think of the upcoming material as a sort of strategic masterclass, a tutorial custom-built for leadership trying to navigate the really complex people side of this infrastructure transformation. Okay, Chapter 1, the case for training, investing in people. The fundamental truth of this entire transformation is actually pretty simple. Training readiness is migration readiness. Every single training decision you make is going to directly impact the overall success of the project. There are 3 phases and 5 skill domains, but this one single organizational imperative rules them all. Because if your people aren't ready, your infrastructure definitely isn't ready. Moving right along to Chapter 2, assessing skills and stack. You literally can't chart a path without knowing your starting point, right? So you begin by surveying your staff on their current VCF proficiency. We're talking things like vSphere, NSXT, and vSAN. Once you've got that baseline, you map it directly to your target state to pinpoint the exact gaps in bare metal administration and physical networking. Finally, you categorize these requirements by role. You've got to clearly separate what your sysadmins need versus your network engineers or your help desk staff. Now, once you know your team's baseline, you have got to define the target stack. Whether you decide to go with Proxmox, Hyper-V, or Nutanix for your hypervisor, Cisco, Aruba, or Juniper for networking, or maybe pure NetApp or Dell for storage, it doesn't matter, because each of these distinct vendor options demands a completely different training path with totally different prerequisite skills. You have to lock in these exact stack decisions first. And that brings us to a really stark warning for anyone managing the financials of this migration. Procuring training before confirming the stack is a budget risk. If you go out and buy training courses or lab access before you've definitively locked in your vendor decisions, you're essentially just setting budget on fire. Misaligned training will absolutely kill your project momentum. All right, Chapter 3, controlling the migration narrative. To truly control the narrative here, you first need to establish your point of no return. This is your predefined technical threshold where their migration officially becomes irreversible. Maybe it's the exact moment the final production workload leaves VCF, or when your current licenses are formally not renewed. Defining this trigger in advance is critical. Hitting this threshold is your exact cue for making external announcements, which completely removes any ambiguity. Notice how deliberate this stakeholder sequencing needs to be. You go from internal IT leadership out to department heads, then all staff, and only then do you communicate to your vendors, partners, and external stakeholders. If you over-communicate early-stage plans to roles that just don't need to know yet, you're going to create premature resistance and a lot of staff anxiety. Let's be honest, IT migrations are chaotic enough without the rumor mill working overtime, right? Strict sequencing prevents that confusion. Let's transition to Chapter 4, navigating the cutover. Under the sustained stress of a migration window, fatigue happens. It's a given. Leaders have got to actively monitor for burnout and skill anxiety. But most importantly, you need to explicitly reframe mistakes. Errors made in a supervised migration context are learning events. They are not performance failures. You have to reinforce this explicitly and repeatedly to maintain project velocity and keep team morale from totally tanking when things inevitably get tough. So here's how you turn that philosophy into action during an actual incident. When a priority 1 or 2 issue pops up, the team resolves it using predefined runbooks. But the real magic happens in Step 3, a mandatory 15-minute debrief to document the root cause. Then, Step 4 feeds those exact lessons directly back into your living runbook. These post-incident debriefs are actually the most effective training events of the entire project. Which brings us to Chapter 5, building institutional knowledge. How do you actually convert the raw, super stressful experience of a cutover into permanent intellectual property? Well, you do it by building a formal knowledge management system. Your migration runbooks absolutely must be converted into living operational documents with named owners. Undated, abandoned runbooks quickly turn into liabilities. You also need a centralized, highly searchable internal wiki. Why? Because knowledge that exists only in an individual engineer's head is a massive succession planning failure and a huge operational risk. And keep in mind, this training in knowledge management isn't just a one-off event. It builds across a very strict timeline. 3 to 6 months before migration, your focus is that skills inventory and getting a signed-off training matrix. During the migration window itself, you're relying on competency sign-offs and those crucial incident debriefs we just talked about. The first 90 days post-migration are all about gap reviews. And ongoing, that is where you implement quarterly fire drills, like simulating switch failures or routing loops, just to keep the team exceptionally sharp. Finally, Chapter 6, the 30-day action plan. Strategy is great, but execution is everything. Here's your roadmap. Week 1, you launch that structured skills inventory survey across all IT roles. Week 2, you aggressively confirm your target stack, your hypervisor, networking, and storage vendors. Week 3, you build out the role-based training matrix and submit your formal budget request. And Week 4, you identify your migration champions by role and get them enrolled in the very first training cohort. Their success literally becomes the proof of concept for the rest of your staff. Which leaves us with this final thought. Training readiness is migration readiness. Every single week you delay compresses your training runway and exponentially increases your risk during the technical cutover. So, the big question is, will you start your training readiness today or wait until a delayed kickoff compresses your runway and drastically increases your cutover risk? Take these steps, empower your team, and secure your migration. Thank you for joining me on this explainer.